Hello and welcome to the RYLACast, the official podcast of Camp RYLA, Rotary District 5810. My name is Greg Tepper, our co-host for the evening. Not my co-host, our co-host, because you and I, we're in this together and we get to be in the same lifeboat with the man they call Josey, Andrew Utz.
Well, hello, Greg. What an intro.
Yeah, I'm working on these every day. Each week, I want to have a more souped up intro for you.
Well, you're achieving that goal you set out for yourself.
This is the RYLACast, the official podcast of Camp RYLA, Rotary District 5810. We do thank you for spending a little bit of your day with us. Coming up here in just a little bit, we caught up with our good friend and not previous RYLACast guest, Kegan Duncan. We talked all about his rather unique RYLA story and what he does now and how RYLA helped him with a pretty major job transition recently. We will hear from him coming up here in just a moment. I do want to tell you one thing that is I want to see if you know what I'm talking about when I talk about this. My wife and I recently went to a college football game at our alma mater. We went to the University of Missouri. We went back up there at the campus. First time in 9 years we'd been back up to Mizzou.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, been a while. Yeah. I will tell you, do not take for granted if you can take a flight directly to your college town. Do not take that for granted because now American Airlines flies direct to Columbia, Missouri.
Hey, anyway, good to know. Anyway,
DFW Columbia. Anyway, so we flew up there, had a great time of the game. We were, and my wife, it's like the third quarter of the game, and they are what can only be described as playing with their food against Middle Tennessee. And my wife says, we absolutely positively have to get a picture. And I'm sure that Josey's like this, that she is somebody who says we need to, does she make it a priority to get family photos?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So then we start doing the thing where you have to start scouting out who you think is capable of taking the photo for you.
Yes.
And so we are just we're standing there, obviously looking like idiots, sizing people up and be like, oh, do you think she could do it? Do you think she would do a good job? I don't know. I would love to ask my wife what she's looking for specifically. I don't know if there's I don't know. Can you describe the person who you would trust the most to take a photo of you and your wife and son?
I think I can. I also think there's going to be some biases that may reveal more about me than others. But yeah, at a football game, I think I would look for a youth, but an older youth who's familiar with technology.
So ballpark 22?
22 to late 30s.
I think that's the demo because here's what happened is we're standing there and we're we've got two people in our sights. We're watching it. And this gentleman who is probably my age, and I'm very old, but he's 37 for the sake of this story.
Okay.
The guy who's my age just walks up to us. He's got his son there or his daughter there, and his daughter looks like she's about 5 or so.
Okay.
And he just walks straight up to us and he does the give me here, come here, give it to me. He saw the look that we were getting and the posture we must have had. He's like, I got it, let's go. And sure enough, I'll text you the photo, Josey. The man did it.
Okay,
it's a good photo.
Look at that.
He called for the ball. He saw that we were in trouble, and he just threw he had single coverage. He threw his hand up, and he got it. So I guess maybe that's the better way. Is if you're in a crowd and you're looking for somebody to take a photo of you, just look like you're looking for somebody to take a photo of you, and just see if there's some sort of stranger who will walk up and just take your phone from you.
That's it. That's great advice, and I'm glad that worked out for you.
Yeah. Otherwise, we might still be there looking for somebody to think about that. The game was 2 weeks ago. Anyway, on to the RYLACast. I have the big segment today, and I would like to talk to you about razors. Now you have a very well manicured beard.
Oh, well, thank you. Zoom is doing me justice. Is
it tough right now?
It's tough right now. It's been an interesting few days, but yeah. Well, thank you though.
I am incapable of growing facial hair. It's just something that is a club that I do not have in my bag. So I'm envious of people who can. So, but I still obviously have to, it gets gross and you have to shave, probably I probably end up shaving about, now that I'm doing like work on television and I need to be clean shaven, I'm probably shaving like 3 times a week. Okay. Just getting clean shaven about 3 times a week. So I do use razors, but I don't want to talk about razors. I want to talk about Occam's razor. Do you know what Occam's razor is?
Occam's razor. Enlighten me. Look at that. I like that. I didn't know if you were going like razor scooter.
Zig when they zag. Razor phone. My wife had a razor phone.
Cool enough for
Occam's razor is the mental model, let's call it, that states that the simplest explanation is most often the right explanation. That's a basic. Let me see if I can look up exactly what what it is. Occam's razor is something along the lines of the simplest. What's I'm looking for the right words. Simple terms. The simplest explanation is preferable to one that is more complex. Okay. When in doubt, go with the simple explanation. That's what Occam's razor is. But Josey, I don't want to talk about Occam's razor. I want to talk about, I know it's a double turn. I want to talk about Hanlon's razor.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of Hanlon's razor?
I have not.
You have heard of Occam's razor, to be clear.
I've heard of, to be fair, I've heard of Occam's razor. I was playing podcast a little bit.
Thank you.
I've not heard of Hanlon's razor.
Hanlon's razor is, to put it shortly, in a short way, never attribute to malice what can be adequately explained by neglect. Okay. And maybe you've heard different ways of putting that, but basically it's a heuristic that it's basically just say, never assume that somebody is out to get you when what is happening can be described by somebody just not paying attention or somebody just not thinking of something. Do you know what I mean?
I know. Yep. I know exactly what you mean.
Because I was reading something about this, and the headline is Hanlon's razor, not everyone is out to get you. And I think that understanding Hanlon's razor can help us see the world in a more positive light, and maybe stop some negative assumptions, and maybe even improve our relationships in the way that we do business. And there's reasons why we think this way. One of them is just we often misjudge the frequency of recent events. So let's just say you get in an Uber, okay? You get in an Uber and the Uber driver makes a wrong turn, okay? A month later, let's say you get in another Uber and for some reason, the Uber driver makes a wrong turn. That doesn't mean that Uber drivers are out to get you. It just means coincidentally, as crappy as it may be, 2 Uber drivers had a bad day.
Right. Okay.
There's also confirmation bias goes into this, that we have these whatever our pre-existing beliefs are, we're going to find information that fits it. If we don't like something, we're a lot more likely to attribute malice to them, be like, oh, well, I don't like that person, so of course what they're doing is intentional towards me. Mm-hmm. And I think you see this a lot of different places. And I feel like it can get in the way. Specifically, it can get in the way of communication and relationships, which can be so important, whenever you're talking about leadership aspects and leadership roles. I think you can really damage relationships by believing that other people are intentionally doing something to cause problems for you, or behaving in a way they intend to be annoying, when in most cases, it's probably they're unable to do something, or they're just accidental, things like that. And so, I was reading this, and this brought up a really good point. If you, and I think this happens to all of us, if we come across somebody who maybe is not a native English speaker, right? But they're trying to like communicate to us and trying to do something in a way that is communicative to us, it's going to take them more time than you would think to communicate, right? Just naturally.
Right.
They're learning the language. That's, you know. And yet, how many of us have found ourselves like annoyed or like being like, come on, like, you know, you're wasting your time, feeling like you're wasting my time, when really they're just trying their best. There's no malice here. It's simply like an inability. They're just trying their best. Like they do not have the same kind of intrinsic knowledge of the language that we do. And so that's a perfect example of a place where maybe we associate malice where there is no malice. Instead, it's just like, this person just learning, like this person's just getting there. There's no clear proof of a conspiracy or some sort of plague of ignorance. I think that the way, like one way to kind of regulate these types of things is when something happens that is annoying, or something happens that you feel like is bad or is malicious. Think about it. Can it be explained like a toddler knocking over a vase? Okay. Like, because I got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. Okay. And they knock over everything. They have never, ever intentionally knocked something over. They're just not good at things. You know, like they're not good
clumsy.
They're clumsy. And so can you associate, like, give people that benefit of the doubt, and I think that that's going to improve relationships and improve your communication. Now, there is, I do want to clarify one thing. I don't think this is a catch-all, and I do think that Hanlon's razor can be maybe overly naive and may not necessarily, it may blind people to when there is actual malice, because there are bad people in the world who do bad things for malicious reasons, right? Or good people who do malicious things for reasons that are unbeknownst to me. So be wary of that. But I do think that more often than not, if something is happening that is annoying to you or you feel like is targeting you in some sort of way, take a moment and see if you can explain this by someone just not understanding something or someone just not knowing that they're doing something wrong. Because I do think that when you give people that grace, you're going to open up a more robust and healthy line of communication across an entire organization. That's my thought on the matter. But I found the idea of Hanlon's razor to be very interesting. And one of those things that explains a thing that I think we know in the back of our mind, but kind of crystallizes it in that sort of way.
Thank you for that. And can I give you what I think now, after you explain that, a real world personal example of Hanlon's razor, and maybe how things are exacerbated when you look at it at a deeper level. So we have a dog, a puppy. I'm not sure if you are aware, and we needed to get him trained. And so my lovely wife has like a mutual friend, but really like a social media friend, like doesn't. More of an acquaintance, but trust their judgment kind of thing, you know? And so she posted, good things about where they got their dog trained. It's a 3-week program. There's no way he listens to this podcast. So we dropped our dog off about camp time because we figured that was also a good boarding situation, training, boarding, good to go. And it's a 3-week give or take program. This dog was at the trainer for 8 weeks. And
what?
Yes. And it was like we were getting a lot of rain. Remember when we knew rain? We were getting a lot of rain. It was super hot. He does it with his mom. And so every week we get a different explanation of like, hey, so sorry, some things are taking a little bit longer than expected. Next week, I promise you we'll have the dog ready. And then it got into, we had some pre-planned vacations. And so maybe, that gave an extra week. But, by about week 4 or 5, we were kind of looking at each other like, is is everything okay? Because his reasoning was plausible, but where we kind of second guessed ourselves. I'll fast forward. The dog's fine. We got the dog back. Everything's good.
Okay, I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, sorry. Our neighbors were like, I think he stole your dog. And my family was like, I think something happened to your dog and he's just covering it up until he can figure things out. And it was the outside sources that were putting doubt in us that was like, okay, this seems, when you take a step back, like you said with Hanlon's razor, and try to put logical, maybe out there explanations, everything made sense. Like who am I to have never had something not go to plan?
Right.
And so finally, like push came to shove, and I just texted the guy and I was like, look, I'm very concerned. Like, can you just send me a picture of the dog? Couldn't immediately send a picture of the dog.
Boy. See, this is one of those things where I'm sure there's a normal explanation, but I'd be like, that is fish. It's a small thing that in the context is like, this is a big thing.
Right, exactly. And, he didn't live at the training spot, yada, yada, yada. But, moral of the story, we got our dog back. Everything's fine. But it was the outside sources, that sometimes you need that sort of like perspective from other people. But something that could easily have been explained away. So that I feel like was my run-in with Hanlon's razor recently.
Yeah. See where you can find it in your life. And there is a big segment. Before we get to Kegan Duncan, one bit of housekeeping. So today we are recording this on September 19th, 2023. Josey, I have a question.
Yes.
Do you know what is happening on September 21st, I think? Is that right?
Ooh, that is correct. I do know this.
Do you know what's happening on September 21st, 2023? A mere 2 days from the moment that we're recording this right now? And probably maybe a day or before or the day of that people are listening to this?
Is it North Texas Giving Day?
It is North Texas Giving Day.
Okay.
Which we explained on the last podcast, so we won't belabor the point, but is a big day for helping the RYLA 5810 Foundation. If you have the means, we would love for you to go to northtexasgivingday.org and search for to give to RYLA 5810. I believe we're the only RYLA. I think we looked that up last time. That if you just type in RYLA, that's the one. It's the RYLA 5810 Foundation. It helps to it helps with things for camp, like, for example, we got to fix the trailer. But also, Josey, you guys can't see it, but Josey is like nodding furiously. It helps with camp. It also helps with all of the year-round programming that RYLA does, throughout the year. I believe there's somebody, a very nice person or organization that is going to match donations on North Texas Giving Day.
That is correct.
And donations are open right now. And so if you can go to northtexasgivingday.org, or you can go to ryla5810.org, where I believe we have a link there as well. Does that sound right? Yes.
That sounds right. Yes.
So we would very much appreciate it. Theoretically, if it helps you, it does go to support this podcast. Like, we're not getting to that money, but like, if that's what helps you to make that donation, that this podcast is like is your reason to do things, then sure, absolutely, it helps this podcast then.
Well, thank you. That's a great reminder, and agree. Maybe it helps the podcast by giving us more volunteers and students to run through the program and eventually be guests on this podcast.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Invest now, and then you might see the fruits of that money on this podcast, like in 3 years.
Yes.
But it does go to help out the RYLA 5810 Foundation, which is a critical organization to help RYLA do the things that it does. Obviously, we would not exist without the love and support of our beloved Rotary clubs around District 5810. We love them very much. But also the RYLA 5810 Foundation does important things too. So if you have the means, North Texas Giving Day is September 21st. If you're listening to this on September 20th, you can still donate. If you're listening to this on September 22nd, you can still donate to the foundation. It just won't be part of North Texas Giving Day. So anyway, there's our little plug. We got anything else to plug on that? I think that's good.
I think that's good. Check our socials.
Yeah, check our socials.
The day of, just to see,
Mm-hmm.
just a lot of things going on with North Texas Giving Day.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Enough waiting. We've made him wait for apparently like 5 years of this podcast to be on the podcast. Here's our conversation with Kegan Duncan here on the RYLACast. Oh, Josey.
Oh, Greg.
We have a big time guest. We're pleased to be joined by our good friend, Kegan Duncan. Kegan, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. Happy to be on the #1 podcast for Camp RYLA District 5810, hosted by Josey and Greg.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you for reading the notes we provide. I mean, knowing
Thank
that.
you for knowing that. Thank you for knowing
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
So something I wanted to tell you, and I started to tell you before we started recording, and now I'll just tell you honestly, Josey and I both were pretty sure we'd had you on the podcast before. but and I'm sure this happens to you a lot. We mistook you for your wife.
Yes. Overshadowed by her, which I am just fine with. She deserves it, so I am good with that.
Josey, when did we have Mackenzie on?
Episode 17, and I have known that all of our episodes and didn't look it up today when I learned who our guest was.
So we had her on some 50 episodes ago, and we're finally getting around to closing the book on the Duncan household. At least, well, yeah, I guess, I don't know if there's any other Duncans we need to interview.
I don't know, but in a power ranking, y'all got it pretty close to correct. So
did Mackenzie...
You mean Mackenzie large gap Kegan?
accurate. Yes, that is correct.
Did Mackenzie bring it up to you that she had been on the RYLACast and you hadn't?
I think it was discussed. I think hers was at camp or at day 7. It was actually an in-person interview, and we discussed it a while after it came out. Like, wonder when my turn is. Well, here we are, 2 years later.
Your turn is when I checked the archives and realized, oh crap, we had Kegan on. So why don't we start on this conversation like we usually do with our guests? Why don't you tell us your RYLA story?
Yeah, so my RYLA story is a little bit unique, but I also feel like it will resonate with quite a few of our campers. I was a late addition to Camp RYLA. I was not added through the normal application process and everything. It's a long story how I actually got connected with Rotary and with RYLA that we can chat about. You can ask me about later. But I was not chosen through normal means. I was, like I said, a late addition. It was after all of the orientation meetings had happened. My first kind of exposure as to what was happening at camp was when I rolled up at Hobletso. That was back in 2009. So it's been a couple of years since then, but I have actually been back to camp every year since then. 2010, I was an ACA, and then on alum staff for 2011 through 2013, and then hopped into a cabin in 2014. Have found my place and been in a cabin ever since. We'll skip those couple of years, and everybody kind of knows what happened there, but been in a cabin ever since.
So you've been Josey, I know I literally just told you had the next question, but I'm just going to jump in. You've been you're on a streak of like every camp that has happened since your camper year you've been at camp.
That's correct. Yeah.
That feels like obviously like Dana's lapping the field, right? But like, I wonder what the longest consecutive active streak is.
Well, and to add to that, what's more unique in Kegan, what you just said, or in terms of like the Kegan Duncan experience, is you were a late addition. So like you got like force fed the Kool-Aid and then decided within a 6-day span, this is where I need to be for every year of my life after this. We
Yeah.
should have had you on several episodes ago as a promotional piece for Rotary District 5810.
It's just built the anticipation. That's what we'll call it.
Okay. So go ahead, Josey. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, like, so you've now been to camp, every year since 2009. You have to be busy. What keeps you making time and not just keeping, obviously, campus a week, but you're involved in the program year round. Like, what keeps you involved, keeps you coming back to this program?
Yeah. So my true passion is working with high school students, with young adults. My bachelor's degree is in youth ministry. I knew that my faith was important to me, and investing in in that sense, youth was important to me. And so this is a way that I can still connect with high school students, and really I just try to be one positive influence in their life. I know that there are so many students, so many campers, so many kids out there nowadays that just need one person to believe in them, that just need one positive influence. And so I try to be that for them. Sometimes it lands, sometimes they connect with somebody else at camp, but if I'm able to be present for that and help facilitate that, then RYLA is a win for me.
So you alluded to it in your passion, but what do you do now for your day job?
Yeah, so I am, simple terms, an admission counselor. I work for currently University of Maryland. I've worked for 3 different institutions. I started at Howard Payne University, my alma mater, moved on to Texas State University, and now I'm with University of Maryland, and I serve as kind of the first point of contact for a lot of students as they're going through the college application, admission, and enrollment cycles. So I serve as their liaison between the institution and their family as they're going through what for a lot of them is a brand new and potentially very intimidating process.
So the natural question would be, like, how you use RYLA and what you do every day. I kind of want to take a different spin on it, because I know that recently, because I ran into you at Panera,
Right.
you that is true. Recently you made that move from Texas State to Maryland. Now you still live here in Texas and stuff. This is a remote working position, but I'm interested in how maybe RYLA helped you with that transition, going from somewhere that you had worked and had established relationships with to a place that I have to imagine with Maryland, you were much less familiar and maybe much less connected with people. I'm interested in how maybe RYLA and the things you took from camp and from the program have helped you with this transition.
Yeah, so another funny story from my arrival at camp, I was one of those kids that was the last like 5 that are showing up to camp. And so
Oh
I was,
no.
yes, that was me. And so I was on the golf cart, and as we're pulling up to the cabin, I was being prepared by the driver, and they said, "Hey, just so you know, basically everybody else at camp is already here, so just walk in like you own the place." Like that's gonna, uh, there's probably something going on. Lean into it, type of a thing. Go in with the positive attitude, and so that's really kind of the attitude that I take in with me whenever I go into something new, and not in a I'm higher or better than you sense, but just a confidence that it's all going to work out, that I belong in that conversation, and have been welcomed and included in that. And so it's been great working with new people and getting to know new people, but having that confidence that I feel like I belong somewhere is definitely helpful.
I'm curious, given that it's a remote position, and I don't know about you, Greg. I'm one of probably two people on this podcast who visited the University of Maryland, have seen the Terrapin firsthand.
Yeah, can't say I have.
Yeah. How I'm going to try to find a appropriate way to frame this question. So given the last couple years with kind of the emergence of remote learning, hybrid working environment, how has maybe not how can you explain how being in your remote position for a university like Maryland maybe gives you a different view on a lot of these students who are making the jump from high school to college based on their previous years of potentially remote learning?
Absolutely. And it being a new experience for me also is something that I can relate to with them. My experience with the university had been pretty limited coming into the new role. And so I think one of the things that aids me in working with these students is uh, trying to relate to them in that new feeling, that feeling of newness, saying that, hey, public transportation in the mid-Atlantic, the Northeast, is vastly different than than in the DFW area. I know this is a pro trains podcast.
Thank you for knowing
Thank
that.
you. Thank you.
Absolutely. And so my first or second trip up here to Maryland, I waited for the DC Metro and hopped on it and took that from Washington Reagan Airport to College Park. And so that's something that I can explain to students that, hey, if you're coming in from out of state, you don't have to have a car, that public transportation is a thing. So that's new for me, new for them. It was a little bit intimidating coming in, but it allows me to relate to them. And so I think that that's something that we learn and that we discuss at RYLA every year, is trying to find common ground between individuals is really a way to provide that connection and facilitate growth.
Thank you for stepping out of your comfort zone and trying a nice, robust public transit system in another part of our fair burg. So now comes the time in this great podcast, as you're well aware, given your rich knowledge and history of episodes, where we ask our esteemed guest to plug something. Could be a book, unrelated university experience, things like that. But the floor is yours, Kegan.
Yeah, so I did, as I was preparing for this, text Mackenzie and say, hey, I have no idea what to plug. And she goes, oh, I don't know what to tell you. So I had to think about this quite a bit. But something that I have recently done is all through high school and in through college and everything. I was a soccer referee, and I have actually gotten back into that this fall season. And so my recommendation, my challenge for the listeners is to explore something that invokes a sense of nostalgia. It's definitely something that I have enjoyed getting back into a little bit, and something that I liked doing during that time of life. It's not the most lucrative thing. You get yelled at quite a bit, but it's kind of fun to lean into that nostalgic feeling. So that's really what I want to plug there, is to find something that you look back on with good memories.
That's an excellent plug. And I don't know if people know this, and this is now I have to do a little bit of my work. There's an official shortage in sports, across America, and especially here in Texas.
That up.
Yes.
You teed that up.
If you're interested, taso.org is the Texas Association of Sports Officials. So if you're interested in that, you can do that because they desperately need you. And yeah, you won't get rich, but you can be involved in sports, and that's fun. So just two dudes working in sports here, Kegan, me and you.
Yeah.
All right. So finally, I believe I'm thinking this through. Aside from, I'm trying to think, Josey, have we had a husband-wife cabin counselor combo platter on this podcast?
I hate to. I know Keegan's shaking his head. I believe John Huber was in a cabin for at least a year.
Yes.
However, the staying power that the Duncan family has, we have not had that caliber.
We haven't
on the podcast.
On this podcast, we have not had active, in their cabin counselor career, a husband wife or a couple, right?
Correct.
I mean, yeah, so, Jessica Mays, Tanner Loxton are coming down the pike, so watch your back. But I will ask you, Kegan, because we know Mackenzie, and Mackenzie can be competitive, and so I would like to know what competing being a competing counselor with your wife is like, because that feels like a truly unique RYLA experience.
It truly is. And one of the really fun things, the peek behind the curtain here, is that while counselors are competitive and are supportive in the moment, we do enjoy an occasional, trash talking.
Yeah,
we do enjoy a little poking fun at each other. But at the end of the day, we know that it's all about the camper experience, their success and failure. There have been a few jabs of, oh, hey, sorry that you won ragball. We're going to go jump in the pool since it's 112 degrees, right? Yeah, that's a classic one. But thankfully, Mackenzie and I are able to set aside our competitive, squabbles between each other during the week, and really focus on the camp.
He's Kegan Duncan. He is the long-awaited guest here on the RYLACast. So long-awaited that we had actually thought that you'd already been on, but apparently we're wrong. Kegan, thanks for your time, my friend.
Thanks for having me, guys.
There he is, Kegan Duncan, our guest here on this Dudes Rock episode of the RYLACast. Finally booked him. Finally did it. And it's basically entirely because we thought we already had. But great to talk with Kegan, as always. He was there, and if you couldn't tell, I don't know if you could tell over the recording, but he was in Maryland.
Yeah, he was eating clam chowder. It was... Yeah, that's crab cakes and football is all really I know about.
That's what Maryland does, baby. Maryland does. And now to round third and bring us home is the man they call Josey, Andrew Utz.
Well, thank you, Greg. And today, to bring us home, we've had an interesting last couple of days. For those not aware, we are expecting our second child.
Ooh.
Within mere weeks. And so we are frantically getting things together for the arrival of the second child, which when you have one child, as you know, Greg, I don't know if you know this or not, but it seemed like I could say that because you have two children. You have to prepare. When you have 0 children and you're preparing for one, you can focus on that. When you have X number of children and you're preparing for Y number of children, you still have to worry about X number of children. So
that is a fact. They still live here.
They still live here. Thank you. And so today's little segment, I'm going to talk about an article on medium.com from Mary DeVries talking about how to succeed at flying by the seat of your pants. Have you ever heard of that expression?
Spectacular.
Thank you. So flying by the seat of your pants is an old saying that goes back to flying, if you can believe it, when pre-instrumentation days, when pilots would literally, determine the where they needed to go, how they needed to pitch the plane based on where they were sliding in the seat. So if you're sliding back, going to, maybe going too high, sliding forward, pull up a little bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, isn't that fascinating?
I never knew that, but I guess that makes sense that like you can tell like the angle, like the where the nose is based on like you like feeling it with your bottom.
Exactly. Yeah, shout out gravity on that. So yeah, so flying by the seat of your pants, there's a lovely story. I won't get into it. We're in the little segment here. But it's the wrong way Corrigan story. And the theme there is big risk equals big glory. But I think what the article also talks about is oftentimes the biggest accomplishments can feel like our personal or others' personal biggest accomplishments can feel like they came out of nowhere. When that's actually not what happens. Typically people toil away, following the rules, just trotting forward, trying to get something to stick, and then they change one thing and it's a snowball effect, right? So as opposed, typically the flying by the seat of your pants is just winging it. And I think it's a fun saying, and it's really cool seeing that from an outside perspective, somebody succeeding overnight, and you're like, wow, they're just kind of winging it. But you don't see kind of the duck on the pond. You don't see the underwater where the feet are just churning. And I think that's a really good lesson that you should still, have a plan and plod away, get into a rhythm, just keep doing what you're doing. And when you get to a point when nothing seems to be working, that's when you maybe fly by the seat of your pants, so to speak, but you're not flying blind. You're using all of that experience and all of that preparation to just go in a different direction that you think is going to succeed. So you're narrowing the focus, if you will, on what seems to work. So that's what I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on that topic.
I think that sometimes flying by the seat of your pants can be useful. I think sometimes, especially if you are, and if you're listening to this podcast, then you're a RYLA person. If you're a RYLA person, this probably happens to you. Sometimes we get in our own head too much. And so I do think that it's not for every instance, certainly, but I do think that there are certain circumstances where it can be a positive, at least as a change of pace. So that's good. And you guys are going to be flying by the seat of your pants a little bit going forward.
That is correct. We're going to, hopefully get our wings under us.
You guys will be just fine. I am positive of that, which actually brings me to one other podcast note. Josey, and this is an executive decision made by me. He did not ask for this. Josey is going on a podcast paternity leave.
Wow, it got approved.
It did get approved. We ran it through the channels, and it got approved. So for the next few episodes, we'll leave it vague for that. Next few episodes, I'll be here. Don't worry. But Josey will not. But don't worry, we're not going to give you solo episodes because who could possibly want that?
Me.
Instead, we will have special guest hosts here. For the next mumbling incoherently number of podcasts that we have on the RYLACast. So we will have some guest hosts. So make sure you tune in for the next couple of episodes. Josey may not be here. It will still be great. I promise. Even without the dulcet tones of Mr. Utz. But Josey, you're not going to be doing anything at the delivery date besides like sleeping on an uncomfortable couch in the hospital. But I hope everything goes great.
Well, thank you, Greg. No, and thank you. I really appreciate this. It's going to be sad to miss being your co-host. I have no doubt that our ratings will skyrocket with my absence. But appreciate you taking on some solo and not solo episodes, but determining special guest hosts
We got a couple. We've got one confirmed. We've got a couple of soft verbals that we're feeling good about. Feeling good about closing the deal on that one. So you'll just have to tune into the next episode of the RYLAcast to find out who is sitting in the other chair.
Okay.
But for now, go ahead.
Well, I will tune in. I will have nothing to do except throw in some headphones and tune in while I'm rocking a baby to sleep or something.
There you go. Exactly right. That is going to do it for us. We do thank you for spending a little bit of your day with us. We hope you'll go to RYLA5810.org. And remember, North Texas Giving Day is on September 21st. But you can donate to the RYLA 5810 Foundation whenever you want at RYLA5810.org. And if you like this podcast, please rate it, comment, and tell a friend. And here to tell a friend with an antiquated way of telling a friend about the RYLAcast is Josey.
Well, thank you, Greg. And in the spirit of aviation, excuse me, a tale as old as time. If there are planes in the air, there are messages being spread across, and it's a twofer. It's an ender. As I go on paternity leave, it's a twofer. Because one might be a little bit more expensive than the other, but antiquated way. The first is to get a handwritten banner sign, listen to the RYLAcast on a banner, and then attach a tow hook that a plane can pick up. And this is this is very useful. Like North Texas Giving Day is right around the corner. So like day of North Texas Giving Day around downtown Dallas, potentially, maybe just get that plane to fly around and say, listen to the RYLAcast with Greg Tepper and special guest host. I think you should be able to fit that all on a banner. If that's a little bit too expensive, and this one is probably more antiquated, get like a crop duster and do the skywriting. Are you familiar with that?
I am.
The downside of that is it's not a mobile message. There's one point in the sky, but listen to the RYLAcast written in the clouds. I think would also be a somewhat effective way to spread the word to listen to the RYLAcast.
Perfect. Josey, thanks for your courage.
Thanks, Greg.
Talk to you next time on the RYLAcast.